Welcome back, my friends. Today's lesson is lesson number 5, and we're going to be actually solving equations. Now, this is step 1 of what's going to be the beginning of your algebra journey. Let's call it that. Now, I'm going to ask you to recall from lesson 4 when we had that question with Zena buying 3 CDs, and we knew that the total cost was 36. And we set up the equation like this. We had 3p equals 36. Well, I wanted to bring that to this lesson because this is a good example of what we call an algebraic equation. And if you remember the previous lessons that we've done, I see the equal sign and the answer. So now I have officially an equation. So the purpose of this lesson now is to talk about a few different strategies that people use in order to solve that variable, in this case, whatever p is. Now, there are 2 ways that you need to know in terms of how to actually solve for that variable. The first method is known as systematic trial, and the other one is called inspection. Now, between you and me, one is going to become one that you're going to be relying on more than the other strategy, but I did want you to show you what both were. Now, let's talk a little bit about systematic trial. Now, systematic trial, the good way to think about what this is, it's actually, you're just basically using trial and error in order to try to figure out whatever that variable is. So if I take 3p equals 36, with systematic trial, I would come up with different numbers. I would just hazard a guess, fill it in there, and see if the equation is true. So let's go. I have an example right down here for us. So here we're going to try to take p and imagine it as being 10. So again, you have to do a little bit of quick mental calculations. So imagine I have here, I'm just going to put a little marker over here to show you that this is what I'm talking about. Imagine that p is 10. So 3 times 10 is 30. Well, I know 30 is too small because I was trying to get to 36. So now I know I need to come up with another number that's a little bit higher. Okay, well, we did if you think about here, we did 10. Just for argument's sake, let's go, and if we do systematic trial, I would take p and imagine it as being 20. Okay, I'm going to put everything into the equation, and 3 times 20 is 60. That is way too high because we're actually looking for 36. So now I know I need a number between 10 and 20. Okay, so if I did that, let's try 15. Again, keeping in mind that with systematic trial, it's just a matter of trial and error in order to figure out what it could possibly be. So I'm going to do 3 times 15, and once I put that into the equation, I get 45. Again, that's still too large because I need to get to that number of 36. And here, one last try, I would put 12 in there, and I would keep on substituting different numbers. That's the whole point of systematic trial. You try different numbers until you get to the answer. In this case, I'm going to put 12 in there, and you know from multiplication, 3 times 12 is 36, and that's the correct answer. So if I go back to the beginning, what was the cost of the 1 CD? The cost of 1 CD was $12. Now, this is another way, inspection. This is the second way that I want you to learn when it comes down to solving for variables. And this is inspection. Now, with inspection, you're using what you already know about calculations in order to help you solve for that variable, probably a little bit more quickly, shall we say, than systematic trial. So again, I'm going to go to my example of 3p equals 36 as an example. So I already know that I need to come up with 3 times something is 36. And if I think to my 3 time tables, I already know that 3 times 12 is 36. So I would slip that into my equation. I know that 3 times 12 is 36. That way, the variable p is $12. 1 CD is $12. All right, so as you can see with inspection, a lot more quicker, and definitely I'm using a lot of what I already know in order to get there even quickly than simply that trial and error. This is a lot more efficiently, probably closer to what I would use. Now we're going to go through a few examples, that way you get used to actually using inspection. Now, I will eventually be doing another couple of lessons on actually solving these equations algebraically, but for now, what I'm going to show you is what I want you to actually do when you do your work in order to help you along that process. Now, my first equation I have here is x plus 7 equals 10. So when I'm going to use what I already know that 3 plus 7 is 10. So in this case, I know x has to be 3. So 3 plus 7 is 10. And if you'll notice, this part here is something that I already wrote down. That way I'm explaining how I came up with that number 3. It just wasn't pulled out of nowhere. Here's another example. So 24 over n, or 24 divided by some number, equals 6. Well, I already know that 6 times 4 is 24. So in this case, if I take my 24 and divide it by 4, I get 6. And again, this part here is what I already know. And that's the part I'm writing down to actually explain how I'm coming up with that answer. That part, it is very, very important. Let's go on to another example. 40 minus y equals 30. So again, I'm going and I'm writing down what I already know and I'm explaining it. I know that 40 minus 10 is 30. Again, a very simple explanation. And here I have an answer of y equals 10. Now I want you to notice here, I'm not just writing the equation down, I'm going straight to the answer. I have this part in here with all my equations, and that's really important because that actually shows me that you're doing some quick mental math, but that explains, and a lot of math teachers, we would turn around and say, that's actually showing us your work. So again, don't have the equation and jump straight to the answer. Make sure you're including that part in there because that's really, really important. Okay, that's the whole point of inspection, is to know and for you to write down what you already know to show us how are you getting there quickly. Let's go ahead. I have a couple more examples here. Now these ones are going to be, I think this is my last one here. This one is a little bit longer, and as you can see, there's 2 parts to this. So 9 times t, so 9 times a variable, plus 2 is going to be equaling 38. So when I go to actually write it down, if I was actually using inspection, I'm going to do this in stages. So I need 9 times some number is going to get me to 36. I did that because I'm just pulling out my 2. I know that I'm going to add 2 to the end once I'm finished. And if I zip over to my 9 timetables, I know that 9 times 4 is 36. And again, if I bring that 2 back and add it here in the end, oh, that should say 38 now. 28. So we'll just change that. That should say 38. So in this case, I know that t is going to be equaling 4. So again, that's the part that we would have there. Never mind my 28 there. Mistake. Oh, here we go. It looks like I have one more word problem. Of course, I always have to make sure I toss those in there. So now we're going to take this process of using inspection and actually put it in, and we're going to apply it to a word problem. So the instructions are to write and solve the equation to answer this word problem. So we have here, Kiara shared 420 hockey cards equally among her friends. Each friend has 105 cards. Now there's 2 parts to this question. The first one wants you to write an equation that describes this situation. And I see that word equation has come back, so hopefully you're picking out that keyword. And the second part is to solve the equation so we can find out actually how many friends actually shared those hockey cards. So as you can see, I've split this up. I'm going to deal with the one on the right side, which is actually establishing my equation. I have to have that first. And here is my way of thinking. So in this case, I'm going to use H to represent the number of friends who are actually going to share the cards. So again, I need to have some sort of an equation. So if I take my 420 and divide that by however number of friends there, that's how I end up with each friend having 105 cards. And so if you come back down to the very, very end, that's the equation that we have. So again, to explain, 420 is the original allotment of cards that we have. H stands for the number of friends, which we don't know. That's why we have a variable there, equals 105 that each person has. So the second part here is now we have to actually go through. We're going to use inspection in order to help us figure out what H is going to be. Now, here is where if I can, once I was going through and I was looking at 400, I started getting to my 4 timetables. And the reason why I did that, if you go back and you think of factors, you'll see that 400 is actually a factor of 4. So in this case, if I take my 400 divided by 4, I'm going to get to 100. That's really, really close to 105. So if I take that same 4, drop it into the equation. So if I take 420 divided by 4, I get that 105. And that's the number that actually I was looking for. And so now I know that H has to be 4. So if I go back to the question, and then it's asking us how many friends shared in those cards, now I know that my answer is 4. Okay? So there you go. There are 2 processes right now in terms of solving equations, systematic. I call it systematic trial and inspection. I prefer inspection personally because, as you can see, you're using what you already know in order to get there quickly. My advice to you is when you do your work and you get to that answer, make sure you explain how you get there. This is not mental math where you go from the equation and you give the answer right away. You need to show how you got there. So good luck on this work, and I'll come up with another lesson after this one, which will show you a little bit more efficient way of getting to the end even more quickly than what we have here. So good luck, and we'll see you next time. Bye.